Hello, everyone. My name is Cesar Zuniga. Um, I work for the Anti-Recidivism Coalition, and we are here to present to you Avatar Parole Suitability Readiness Correspondence Course. My coworker, my good friend, Jamel is here. Jamel, so before we get into this work, big brother, and before we let them know what we're here to offer, let's introduce ourselves to these men and women that are going to be looking at this video. And just give us a quick introduction about yourself and who you are, where you're at in life, and so we can get to know you.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Caesar. My name is Jamel Carter. I am a life coach with ARC. I'm also on this amazing team, the Hope and Redemption team. Yeah. And how I even came to be on the Hope and Redemption team, I'm very blessed, and I'll give you the backstory and how that all transpired. So in 1994, I was convicted of a first-degree murder. I was sentenced to 25 years plus 5, so a total of 30 years to life. And on my sentencing day, for me in the courtroom was the worst day of my life, Caesar. I had both of my parents there in the courtroom to see their only son get this amount of time that I righteously deserve. And in that moment, man, I just saw my mother tearing up, crying, and I wanted her tears to stop. So I asked the judge, I said, "Excuse me, Your Honor, do you mind if I embrace my mother?" Like I said, she was tearing up, and it was just tearing me apart to see my mother witness me on sentencing day. And so the judge told me, "Mr. Carter, you never been a disturbance in my courtroom." And he said, yeah, he was going to allow that. So the bailiff unhandcuffed me, called my mother down, and I hugged my mother, and I whispered in her ear, and I told my mother, I said, "I apologize for the embarrassment." And I told my mother, I said, "Mama, I promise you I'm going to do whatever it takes to come home. And when I get home, I'm going to right my wrongs." Now, Caesar, I didn't even know how powerful those words would be at the young age that I was. But those words, that promise was real powerful and instrumental in my journey, bro, in my rehabilitation. Um, Long story short, like when I went to prison, I didn't make good decisions. I was still crashing and burning. I was still making bad choices and decisions, but the promise did pull me back on the road, on the right path. And that promise that I made to my mother. So I wanted to fulfill the promise. And a long story short, Caesar, I did fulfill that promise. In 2016, uh, I went to the board and I got found suitable. Um, and so the best day of my life was when I returned home to both of my parents. My family had morphed. At that time, it was 44 nieces and nephews. I'm an only son, an only uncle, a baby brother. Like, man, I see my whole family there on the day that I came home. And I told my mother, I was like, "Mama, remember I made you a promise? Well, I'm here now." And the second part of the promise is now for me to right my wrongs. And so landing in ARC when I came home, like that was a soft place for me to land. And having the opportunity to be a part of the Hope and Redemption team where brothers like myself would be able to go back and to be of service. And that was one of the things that I said that I wanted to do if I was to ever be blessed to come home, because the story is I didn't do it by myself, Caesar. I was very blessed to have good men in my life to help me connect the dots. So that was one of the things that I wanted to do, was to go back into prison, as so many men helped me figure things out, to give back and to be of service in that way. That opportunity was afforded to me through ARC. Sam Lewis and Scott Budnick created this amazing team, man. And man, like, where do I sign up for it? So I was blessed to have that opportunity, and that's what I've been doing since I've been home for 3 years now. Almost 3.5 years. We've been doing the Hope and Redemption team, and man, it's an enormous amount of joy in my heart, man, that I've made good on that, and to see the men impacted by my stories, to help these brothers come home to experience this newfound freedom, very similar to me. Like, I made good on the promise, and I'm doing that. I'm righting my wrongs, Caesar. So that's my story, man. And on a check-in, man, I'm a 10, bro, for the story, what I just mentioned to you, and the fact that I'm able to continue to be of service, bro. So that's my story. That's my check-in. Back to you,
Thank
Caesar.
you, thank you, Jamel. And I'm sure that our audience uh, is going to recognize you. They're going to know, like, yeah, I heard that story before. He's doing a lot of great work, so that's pretty cool to hear for the people that don't know who you are. For myself, like I said earlier, my name is Caesar. I served 25 years in the California Department of Corrections. At 17 years old, I was arrested for a murder and for assault with a firearm that my gang had committed. So the first 15 years of my incarceration, I was a very angry individual. It was everybody else's fault but mine. When I looked at myself in the mirror, um, I liked what I seen. There was nothing wrong with me. I felt like there was nothing needed to be changed. And if I was ever going to come home, it was going to be through the courts because I didn't believe in the board. I didn't believe in none of that stuff. And plus, at that time, they weren't letting anybody go. And I was still being irresponsible and inconsiderate. But the blessing came in 2005, and I believe this is around the time that you and I met as friends in Soledad. I was introduced to this self-help therapy, right? And a good friend of mine named Danny Partita, a mutual friend of ours, told me, he's like, hey, bro, you have to start preparing, like, because in case this stuff with the course doesn't work out, like, what's going to be your other option? How are you going to make it home? And I said, you know what? But like I said, I don't feel there's anything for me to change. There's nothing wrong with me, right? And it's everybody else's fault but mine. So, with that being said, he told, you know what? Let me bring you into this. Come join me at this group, one of these self-help groups. He goes, and if you don't like it, bro, it's good. Don't worry about it. If you don't like it, you could. There's no repercussions. You don't have to show up no more. You can leave if you want to. And I can't remember exactly what group it was, but I remember the task for that group was for me to write out my life story and see what kind of life I was living, prior to incarceration. And of course, I'm writing all this stuff down about how destructive I was and all this bad stuff. And none of that stuff stood out for me, right? For me to say, oh man, I need to change. No, what stood out for me was the fact that I got to the age of 16, 17 years old, and my house was getting shot up with my family in it, and I wasn't saying nothing, right? I was taking the coward's way out. I was I was when my family was confronting me about the situation that was going on at home, instead of me, because I thought I was a man, uh, owning up to the responsibility of, like, I'm bringing this to the house, I would get defensive, and I'd be like, hey man, this is a neighborhood that we live in, and this is a norm, and I would storm out. I didn't want to hear it, right? So at 16 and 17 years old, that stuff right there made sense to me. But now in my 30s, it didn't make sense to me. It wasn't landing with me. It wasn't sitting well with me, because the question was like, well, why wasn't I saying something? And because of what I was bringing to the house, the danger of me being a gang member and a criminal out here in society, man, I could have got my family killed. And right there and then, when I wasn't able to come up with those answers for those questions, Jamel, I knew there was something wrong with me. I knew that I was the problem, bro. I knew that I was at the place that I needed to be at that time, which was in prison, for the stuff that I had just put my family through and put myself through, my community and everybody, bro. So when I finally realized that I had a problem, bro, I knew I needed to do the work. And so, like I said, from there I got the ball rolling in 2000. In 2012, I went to my first parole board hearing, and I got denied. Rightfully so, too, because I was lacking a lot of stuff that we're going to talk about in this curriculum. I was lacking insight, I was lacking remorse, and I was lacking responsibility. So in 2015, I went to my second board hearing because I figured some stuff out, right? I connected some dots into my life, and I figured some stuff out was when I was able to really internalize this work, and I was able to get myself home. Um, when I came home, I continued living the life of service. When at one point I thought that my calling was to be a gang member and a criminal, I really believed that was my calling, because I wasn't good at sports and I wasn't good at school, but I was good at gang banging. I really loved it and enjoyed it. So at one point I believed that was my calling. By me going through my transformation and my change, now I realize that my calling is helping other people and being of service. So while I was doing that in prison, and I came home in 2015, I continued doing it out here. Whether it was to sharing my story, feeding the homeless, whatever it was, I was able to push that out here. And in 2017, Sam Lewis sent me an email, invited me to be part of this tremendous, courageous, beautiful hope and redemption team. And of course, what better way than give back, right? Than being part of this team and going back into the prisons and facilitating these kind of character development groups to the guys inside. So we've been doing that going almost on 3 years, bro. If you really look at it, Jamel, in July is going to be 3 years that we've been doing this work, bro. And it's beautiful, man. It's beautiful because um, all the sacrifices, all the stuff that we've done, now we're seeing the rips of it, right? It's like you plant those seeds, and then now you see those seeds popping out here, left and right? We've seen all these guys that were once as participants in our groups are now out here in society and being contributing members to society and being good people and back with their families where they belong, because of who they are today. So I'm very blessed to be doing this work, especially doing it with you, bro. You're my coworker. So we've been doing this stuff for a while. And that's my story. That's my story. Everybody that knows me, I always check in at an 8 because I always leave a little bit of room for improvement. At the end of the day, it's something that I could have done better. Maybe even this recording, I could have done better for the next time, right? I'm good. I'm getting good at it now, a little bit. I'm not getting as nervous, because I see that red button. I see that red button on the side. It's recording, and you feel like you want to do everything perfect, but guess what? There's nothing perfect out here. You're gonna make mistakes, and it is what it is, big bro.
That's right.
So with that being said, man, we're gonna get into some of this stuff that's called here. It says a board of parole hearing introduction. So I'm going to read off from the paper that I have here. It says a parole suitability hearing is a hearing conducted by the Board of Parole Hearings, which is the board, to determine if an individual should be released from prison. The panel must first determine whether a person is suitable for release on parole. Regardless of the length of time served, a life prisoner will be found unsuitable for and denied parole if, in the judgment of the panel, the prisoner will pose an unreasonable risk of danger to society if released from prison. All relevant, reliable information available to the panel should be considered in determining suitability for parole. Being open and honest during board of parole hearings is an essential part of being found suitable. Additionally, insight, remorse, accepting responsibility for your actions, and absolute accountability are also crucial parts of parole hearings. Commissioners are highly trained, so attempting to deceive them can only end in one way: badly. So the first thing that we're going to talk about, Jamel, we're just going to run through them. Can you tell us the 8 categories that are covered in most parole board hearings?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Caesar. Yeah, so one being the commitment offense. And as you can see there, we won't go into all of them, but I do want to take note, something that when I heard you reading the moments ago, how important it is to understand that insight, the responsibility aspect of it, and the remorse aspect of that. And in that, one thing that has worked for me when I focus on that is like I connect insight with the past. I connect the responsibility, like how I'm changing the present me, the present person that I am, and I connect with the future, like the remorse and living amends, like giving back and what I intend to be doing. So that kind of has helped me in dealing with all these topics that we're going to be talking about and discussing. And I notice it keeps coming up. So if we pay attention to that, that's very important. Also, number 2, prior criminality. Number 3, unstable social history. Number 4, past and present mental state and attitude towards the crime. So here again, attitude towards the crime is coming up for what I've seen already a few times. Is mentioning about our attitude. So that's just a mental note. Attitude must be really important. Number 5, misconduct while incarcerated. Number 6, institutional adjustments. Number 7, realistic parole plans. And number 8, closing statements. So here's a list. As you said, these are some of the categories that you can expect when to cross or come across and have a discussion when you go to the board.
And you know, Jamel, some of these are like a lot of people are already doing these, right? Um, like institutional adjustments. Some people have learned, you know what? Because I remember when I was in there, you know, I stopped getting write-ups like around, I think it was like in 1999 was my last violent write-up. And then I had a little setback around 2009, right, when these gadgets were introduced to the institutions, and I got caught with one. I did, and I paid up for it. You know, they gave me a fire denial for that. But either I was either doing stuff right now that I wasn't getting those 128s, those 115s anymore. So that institutional adjustment, which was just, I remember when I change began, where I was like, you know what? Because I don't want to get any more right. I don't want to do. I'm gonna search my cell. I'm gonna search it. Me. No more razor blades. No more clotheslines. No more stuff that when they come in here, they
Mm-hmm.
can give me a 115 or a 120. Like no more of that stuff.
Right.
And one of the things that when I was first introduced to this change was it was hard for me to sacrifice, right? Sacrifice and one of the prior videos when I was talking to my other coworker, I was telling him that it was difficult for me to sacrifice even having an extra pair of shoes,
Huh.
right? Because now you're only supposed to have one. But I remember at one time in Solidar, you were able to have two pairs. And when they went down to one and then to the 6 cubic feet, you know, a lot of the stuff started showing up for me. Well, I don't need to have 6 cubic. Why do I have one? So all this stuff, it was an adjustment because I have to get, you know, it's just like I'm readjusting the wires up in my head on how to think, right? What I thought was right wasn't right. It was actually wrong. So those adjustments, I started working on them. Um, you know, the realistic parole plans. Like you said it perfect earlier. Insight was the past, responsibility was the present, and remorse was the future, right? It's the same thing as knowing your story, right? If I when I paroled, I already had a set plan on what I want to do when I came home, like where I wanted to work in. And even though plans changed because this job was dropped on my lap and it was like it threw a wrench in the game, but for the better. I had a plan coming home, right? There was a plan. Like I
Hmm.
just didn't step out and say, okay, now what? Right? Like now what do I do? Like no, there was a plan for me. I had a plan, and even though that plan was and I could talk about it today because the plan was do my 6 months at transitional housing, right? And after my 6 months are done, then I'll go up to Victorville where my family's at and live my life out there. That was the plan, right? And get a job out there and settle down and get married and whatever out there. And Chan plans changed when I came home and says, you know what? I can't do that. Now, if I want to get ahead, if I want to make it out here, I have to do it, right? And I already knew how to sacrifice because I already had done it in prison.
Hmm.
So a lot of this stuff, even though it might seem foreign to us, uh, once we start really investing our time into it, it's gonna be normalized, right? It's gonna be normalized. So uh, it
Before you
says
move,
here, go ahead.
Caesar, before you move on, I want to add a little value to that to the conversation, uh, and I encourage everyone participating in this course to really give it some thought, like you said, in investing in like the future, right? Because a lot of the work seems, or the mentality for me, what the mentality was like, we were entrenched in changing the character defects, becoming aware of it. That a lot of the work just went there, and a lot of times we don't really give the thought that is needed to like, what is my life going to look like from the moment I get out, 5 years down the line, 15 years down the line, 20 years down the line, 30, 40 years down the line. So because some of us, and I'll say me, had the belief, well, not so much the belief, but was told you'll die in prison. And some brothers have actually believed in that, right? So they don't really think like, oh, okay, brothers are going home, but I don't know. They come home and then they don't know what to do. Like, what's next? Wow, I didn't even know I was going to be able to get out of prison. I didn't even know that was there. I was told I was going to die in prison, so I don't know what to do next. and then not knowing what to do next, and you open the door up for some of the old old bad behavior, character defects to come in, and before you know it, you back down a road, entertaining a road and behavior that, you know what I'm saying, could easily send you back to prison. So I think it's very important to really invest in those thoughts too. Here's what my life's gonna look like when I get out. When I get found suitable, this is what's gonna happen. And not just a plan, but a number of plans. I remember the saying said you have a plan until you get hit. You know what I'm saying? Like right now, this COVID-19 this is a real hit right now. So now what do? And you said it, I can suffer. I know how, like suffer for what's important. So yeah, I just wanted to add a little value when I heard you saying that. Because that was something that I came across too. Like, wow, I'm out now. Now, what's next? You know, and technology is, oh man, it's at an all-time high. So I just want to encourage the women and men to give it some real thought about, like, what is your life going to look like once you get your newfound freedom? What is that going to look like? And I really say, like, we need some assistance and help. And then that's where ARC, they've already figured it out. You should be stepping in and the moment you out. That's what it's support. So just wanted to add a little value to that, bro. Thank you.
And this stuff, and just so all our audience can know, like, this isn't our stuff that we put together. Like, this is these 8 components, categories. It's not the stuff that ARC or even us as the Hope and Redemption team that we came up that's needed. No, you can find this stuff in the Title 15 book. All we are here to do is to break this stuff down to you so you could understand it, right? So you can say, okay, what does it mean by realistic parole plans? What does that mean? It means that you understood, or you understand that you have to go to transitional housing, right, in order for you to decompress. So because you have a few letters of acceptance in your packet, right, that means you've done the work. Marketable skills. That means you've been in PIA. That means you've been in vocational and you've picked up plumbing or electrical or masonry, right? So that's what that means, right? Even like for the closing statement, what's that for? It's an opportunity for you to sit there and say, man, this is why I deserve to come home, because I've done the work, you know, and I have a plan. I'm not just I just didn't sit in prison with, sitting on my hands and just stayed on neutral. No, I worked for my future. I educated myself. I went to Coastline or Palo Verde or whatever, right? Or whatever correspondence courses that I take, that I prepared myself. So when I come home, I won't have to depend on my family, and I could get ahead on my own. Right? I can get ahead on my own. They'll still be there to help me if I need them, but let me do this. Let me do this, right? And that's why we're just here to break that stuff down to you. Break it down to you so you can understand it. So when you're getting ready, like our audience gets ready to go to their hearing, they won't get caught off guard with any of these categories when they're not able to articulate them. Correct?
Correct.
All right. So with that being said, it says, well, let me finish off what it says here about the introduction and these categories that we just talked about. It says, it is in your own best interest to ensure that you understand all these sections. It is your responsibility to clearly demonstrate that you are fully rehabilitated. The first homework assignment can be utilized as sort of a self-evaluation to gauge your knowledge about the process and to assess how committed you are to the kind of personal self-growth that it takes to get found suitable. And I couldn't have put it in better words myself, right? There's going to be 10 lessons in this board prep class, right? So every time we do one of these videos, we're going to talk about some of the line of questions, and we're going to answer them the way we want to answer. But remember, you got to put this in your own words, right? The answer's got to come from you. So when you guys get this packet and you guys answer these questions, answer them to the best of your ability. Put some thought into them. Don't just yes and no answers. Put some thought into it, right? Like this stuff means something to you. Like this is, but I've always said that this isn't the blueprints of you going home, but it's the format to put your stuff together. So when you go into those hearings, you can hit a home run. There's people today, man, that are hitting home runs on their first pitch, which means on their first hearings, and that was never heard of when Jamel and I went to board, right? That was never heard of. You either the first hearing was always just the one that set the foundation for the up and coming ones, right? But now the board is set up today, it's a lot different. They're a lot shorter
Mm.
hearings, and they're getting to the point, right? And a lot of the stuff that's covered in these lessons is the stuff that you want to have prepared, that you want to have in your packet. So when those commissioners come across your packet and they've seen that you've covered insight, responsibility, and remorse, man, all we got to do is have a conversation, Jamel. That's it. That's all we got to do, bro. Have a conversation about some of this stuff that you've written down right here, and you're free to go, my man. That's it. As simple as that. So for the first question here, for the assignment 1, it says, what is your motivation for getting out of prison, and are you willing to do the hard work that is necessary? What does that mean to you, Jamel?
Well, for me, I did come across this very question. What was my motivation? And I'm kind of like mentioned it earlier, the promise that I made to my mother. So it was that really what my motivation was, brother. For a long time, like everything that I did was just for my mother. I'm her only son. But I have to say this, the promise only took me so far, Caesar, in my rehabilitation. It started off with my mother, but then ultimately the motivation was myself, bro. And I just wanted to be a better person. And I know it sounds kind of cliche, but I wanted to not only just be a better person, but I wanted to get back out there and help out with my family. And then I wanted to be able to make my community, because I did so much, you know what I'm saying, and tearing it up and tearing it up, turning it upside down. Like I really wanted to get out there and add value now, add value to the conversation with my family, add value to the conversation about rebuilding my communication. So my motivation started off with my mother, the promise that I made with her, but it ultimately, like it was really at a point in my incarceration, like, man, I'm doing this for myself, man. Not trying to be selfish or nothing, but I was doing it for me. And then the second part of that was I was willing to do the hard work. So another profound question for me, because I was somebody that took shortcuts my entire life. I start something, and as soon as I got challenged by it, I give up on it. So that showed up with me in my education. That showed up with me just in every aspect of my life, my relationships. I don't get my way. I don't suffer for what's important. I just give up on them. So was I willing to do the hard work? Of course I was. And from the hard work looked like one of the strong, real big for me was letting go and cutting ties with the gang lifestyle, the criminal and gang lifestyle. Very hard for me. As I mentioned, I'm an only boy in my family. So my gang like members, they were like brothers. So it was real hard for me. So that, along with getting my education, I'm proud to say that I did get a associate's degree through Coastline. Uh, and it was just starting it and just going through it and being able to complete it. It took a lot of work, you know what I'm saying? One of my partners mentioned to me before, he said, Jamel, you're mentally lazy. Like, it didn't feel good to hear that, but it was true. Mentally lazy. Every time I got challenged with something mentally or it didn't go my way, I would just give up. So building on once I was aware of that, I just started building up good habits, Caesar, and completing tasks, whatever the task was. It could be something minor to something big, like I said, with education. So doing the work, man, it was enormous for me throughout my whole journey in rehabilitation, bro. But that was just a few of the things that I felt like I had to do the work.
Yeah. You know what? For me, the motivation for getting out of prison was I didn't like who I had become, right? Because first and foremost, when I was a gang member and a criminal, even though I had separated myself from that lifestyle already, I was still holding on to that little tiny string, right? I was still holding on to it, and it's funny because I heard you mention it before, where you said I was holding on to something that had let go of me a long time ago. And
Yeah.
when I was like, man, that's crazy, because that's what I'm doing right now, because they let go of me. And I refuse to acknowledge that, because if I acknowledge that they let go of me a long time ago, that only means one thing, that everything I did and where I'm at today with the life sentence, everything was for nothing, bro,
Mm.
for nothing. And man, that was a tough pill to swallow. Like I just, it was hard for me. So the motivation for me for getting out of prison was actually for me to become a better person. I just didn't want to be that self-centered, egotistical, inconsiderate, irresponsible human being anymore. I didn't want to be that person, because that person, I was not only was I hurting myself, but I was hurting my family. I was hurting my chance of coming home to them. I was, it was just, I just didn't want to be that no more,
Mm.
and the motivation was, you know what, man, you know, when I get out, I don't want to be this person anymore, right? So I have to start doing the work. And the second part of that, are you willing to do the hard work that is necessary? Well, like you said earlier, cutting ties, that little mini string, getting rid of that, right? And going back to being me. And then the hard work within me was to address all the issues. And believe me when I tell you, I had a lot of issues:
Mm-hmm.
insecurity, low self-esteem, those feelings of acceptance, those abandonment issues, to really embrace them and say, okay, well, why was I so insecure? Right? Or why was I suffering from the self? So it's like, and we all heard it, you peel the layers back on that onion, man, until you get to the core issue. And that was me. That was the hard work that it took for me. Like, I was able to do that. Like today, do I suffer from insecurities today? Uh, a few, I do, right? But I'm more secure about who I am today. I don't have to prove anything to anybody. I'm okay with being me, and because I've done the work, right? I don't suffer from abandonment issues anymore. Um, like, I don't suffer from any of those those positive factors that led me, because that's what led me into joining the gang lifestyle, because I wasn't getting that stuff at home. I didn't believe in me, and I went and found it in the street, right? So for me, I was willing to do that hard work to fix whatever happened to Caesar, right? To bring him out of the grave that I had buried him in, and start putting him back together, and figure out, well, why did I give up on this dude? Why did I give up on Caesar so fast? Like, at 12 years old, I gave up on him. I went and joined this gang where I could have been dead right now. If it wasn't for prison, I'd probably be dead,
Right.
right? And that means I didn't value my life. So how come I didn't value my life? How come I didn't value me? How come I didn't value my family, what they were providing for me? Like, all that stuff, bro, that was the hard work. To me, to really look at it and say, you know what? I'm in prison for a crime I didn't commit, but this is where I need to be. I
Caesar,
deserve to be here.
uh, I don't mean to cut you off, brother, but you said some powerful stuff. You highlighted about doing the work, and you mentioned all the low self-esteem, acceptance issues, self-doubt, insecurity. Like, can you kind of like classify what is that? Because we're going to talk about it in this course, but what is that like? Can you can you
So to me, that's sort of like the causative factors on what led me into becoming a gang member and a criminal. That's what pushed me out the door, right? And because I suffer from insecurities and from low self-esteem, I went and like being destructive, uh, and being another person, a person that I thought I was, but I really wasn't. That's what gave me, it motivated me to become a gang member. Like, the more destructive that I was, the more pats on the back that I received. So man, I was cool with it, right? But I knew, me being responsible or being Caesar, or saying no, I'm not doing that, like standing up for myself, I couldn't do that. I didn't
right.
have it in me.
So that's a term that we're going to run across. We're going to continuously hear it in doing our work in rehabilitation, causative factors. So by definition, if you just summed it up, can you define what causative factors are in a definition, Caesar? You already explained what it is, but just what a definition of it would be.
So the causative factors is what pushes you over the edge to commit the kind of crime that you committed, that will land you in prison, right? Contributing factors
There
is
you
the
go.
stuff that we have no control over. It's the stuff that if I grew up in an environment where there was gangs, drugs, violence, death, like it was an environment that, and I keep telling my parents, like, man, I don't want to live here. I'm scared. Like, I don't want to live here, and they're like, hey, man, this is all we have for now. Like, I have no control over that. Or even if it's the environment at the home where parents are very abusive, you see moms with a different dude every night. You can't change that. Those are contributing factors. Like, that's part of your upbringing, and this is why it's for a lot of people, when they ask them about insight and to talk about their past and what happened with them, man, they seen stuff that they weren't supposed to see at such a young age, and then that molded them into becoming what they became, which was a gang member or a criminal, right? And they had embraced these new character defects of being violent, being aggressive, being angry, being resentful, right? Being mean, because where they were at, this what was shown to them. Did I break it down for you pretty good
Yeah,
there?
you did it. You did a real good job in it, and I believe it's very important because a lot of times we hear this term causative factor and contributing factors, and then we don't spend a lot of time there. A lot of time we just breeze through it, but then it comes back and it hits us when we got to go to the psych evaluation where it's a little bit more technical, and we're almost approached with the question, tell me a couple of your causative factors. So
Mhm.
I thought it was important right now to slow it down, and I really appreciate it because I think you did a real good job in defining what causative factors were versus contributing factors.
Yeah, and then a lot of times when it's situations let's say you're in the board, like let's say I'm the commissioner, Jamel, and you're going to the board, and I could simply ask you, Jamel, what were some of the causative factors to lead you to commit the crime that you committed? And you could just sit there and say, because you've done the work or because you've seen this video, man, I was angry, I was suffering from self-esteem, anger, and insecurities, right? That's it. That's all I want to know, right? Because all I asked you was what? What were the causative factors
Mm.
that led you to commit the kind of crime that you committed? Boom. So that was it. I didn't ask you why you were suffering from self-esteem. I didn't ask you why you were so angry. I didn't ask you none of that stuff. But a lot of times, because we don't know, what we do is we say, oh, okay, well, I'm going to tell them is anger, because I know them. I know my causative factors. This, and this. And because I was this, I was it. And then you go on the rampage, and then now you're like, they're looking at you like, okay, this guy doesn't even know how to follow instructions because he's not even listening to the question. The question was, what were your causative factors? Now, if I want to know why you were so angry, Jamel, then I would ask, Jamel, why were you so angry? Because my dad was abusive. I was a baby boy, and I felt like I wasn't getting any attention. And it was all about my sisters. They were his queens, and I was just the mistake or whatever, right? Whatever that was. Does it make sense?
Makes real good sense. And I want to say just listening to you talk, that's how you know an individual has done the work, when you're able to not like, just saying things, but really like this is an opportunity to be something better. Like you said, I wanted to just be a better person. Like really, they have given us the opportunity to be just that, a better person. So in so many ways, I feel like I'm being empowered to take control back of something that I didn't have control over, which was my life, by becoming aware of these things, these character defects, these causative factors. Now the work is, how do I work on them? What do I need to do to change them? How do I build up good habits, and what do I swap them out for? Like, that's the work. And then like, it's not even like, because I don't want it to be confused with our listeners that we're just doing this for the board. No, getting back to what I was saying about the person that you want to be for the rest of your life. What does that look like? Because if you want to be somebody that's caring, giving, and going around and helping out, adding value, being a productive member of society, it's impossible for you to be that person if you're still holding on to some of these character defects and some of these causative factors that contributed to you coming into prison. So a lot of times we just breeze over this stuff in conversation, but we have to invest in ourselves and dig in sometimes and really just like, man, be the scientist, I mean, it is an opportunity, you know what I'm saying? So just challenging ourselves and you know what I'm saying, and doing the work and seeing ourselves in a different light, man, wanting more and being more. So I just wanted to slow it down so we don't do like so many others have done and just breeze through something this important. Thank
Yeah. You know, and like I said, listening is a great skill. Like listen, like, because remember, you're in a hearing where it's just a conversation. It's
you.
just like right now, Jamel and I are having a conversation about this board stuff in this video. So him and I are having a conversation, and he's listening to what I'm saying because he's asking me questions about what I'm talking about, how he wants me to break stuff down. That's the same thing with the board. Just listen. Stop. I used to have a bad habit of finishing somebody else's sentences. Oh, I know what he's trying to ask me, and then I would answer, and I'm like, no, that's not even what I was going with that, because I wasn't a really good listener. You
Mhm.
know, I was just hearing the person. I wasn't really listening. I wasn't paying attention. And these hearings, remember, man, this is, you're getting your freedom back. So you have to listen to the question, right? So they'll know that you know how to follow instructions. So the second one is, do you know your story and life experience? Do you know how self-help therapy benefits you in gaining insight into your character defects and the causative factors of your life crime? Man, you see? You
Yeah.
see? You
Yeah.
see? This
Yeah.
is why, bro. You know, this is why we do this. Because we want everybody to understand why is it important, Jamel?
So when I think about that, like knowing your story, there's so much value in that. So it may have started off like ugly, right? That doesn't mean that I discredit my story or anything. It happened, you know. Um, but it's important to do it because for me, like my understanding is history has a way of repeating itself. And so me coming back to prison is something like I don't never ever, it's not gonna happen. So I feel like I need to challenge myself in a way and learn my story. And one of the instrument tools that I use or exercise that I use to learn my story, because it's so much, you know, was a timeline. Caesar, a timeline helped me highlight the monumental things that transpired in my life when I was a young adolescent, young kid. And usually a lot of that stuff goes back to the house, and where a lot of it can be real sensitive. We don't want to talk about a lot of things that took place in the home. Like my father, and I'll share with you, like he said, like, boy, don't you talk about none of this stuff that transpired in the home. Don't you share that with nobody, what goes on in this house. So like in this whole rehabilitation stuff, like you have to be able to share that. You have to be able to talk about that. And in other self-help groups like CGA, we're encouraged to learn that and be able to share that part, you know, because that stuff is what as causative factors, as you mentioned. That stuff, we need to purge that out of us, man, and not be afraid to talk about it. And it's all part of discovering the new person that we want to be. So, learning my story, I utilized the timeline. It was a real big resource for me,
Hmm.
and highlighting them like the monumental things that transpired in my life.
Yeah, you know, for me, the benefit of the self help therapy is it pointed out to me that I was a problem. Like it really was me. You know, man, because like I told you before, like I said in the beginning of the video, when I seen myself in the mirror, man, I was really okay with what I seen because I kept seeing like the crime that I'm in for, I didn't even commit. So I didn't even do this crime. So there's nothing for me to change, right? But through this self-help therapy, I was able to see that I wasn't, that I was a monster, that I was a terrorist to my community, right? I was a menace to society. And prison was the best thing that could have happened to me. A lot of people can't sit here and truly say, man, me too. Like, no, for me, because only I know the destruction and the pain and suffering that I was bringing to my home, to my family, to the people that were there for me since day one. That because of my actions, I could have got them killed. And if it wasn't for this self-help, I would have never known. I would have continued living a selfish, irresponsible life where it was all about where's my package and where's my JPay and how come you ain't came to visit me and You know, can I get a package in my seller's name because the package you sent me 2 weeks ago is already gone. My food's already gone. I'm hungry. Like, it would have been all about me. I would have, because that's exactly who I was for the first 15 years of my life. I was a selfish individual. Nothing had changed from the person that I was in the street and the person that I was in prison. Nothing had changed for the first 15 years. Selfish, inconsiderate, didn't give a crap about nobody but me. But through self-help therapy, man, I was able to see, like, man, you know what? I got to start being selfish. You know what? Instead of me asking my family, especially during these times right now, let's say I'm in prison right now, you know, our families, a lot of them are losing their jobs out here. So if I was still living that irresponsible life, I'd be like, hey, man, where's my money at? Where's my $100 for a store or whatever? You haven't even asked if they're still working. You haven't even asked if they're okay. You haven't even asked if the bills are paid.
Oh.
Hey, man, why is the phone shut off? How come I can't call collect? Well, because the phone ain't paid yet. That's money that we don't have. But we never took the, I never, I'm not going to say I never took the time to ask them if they were okay, to ask my family, are the bills paid? Are you eating? Is everyone okay? Like, is everyone in good spirit? Like, no, it was all about, where's my package? And man, through this self-help therapy, man, really internalizing what I was learning from these groups, man, made me the dude that I am today, made me the man that I am today, and I can honestly tell you today, Jamel, that I truly do love myself today, because I will not put myself in harm's way, and I just want to live, bro. I want to live. That's it. I want to be able to there were so many beautiful places out here in Los Angeles that I want to be able to visit, when before I was robbing myself. I can't go over there because them dudes are over there. I can't go to the beach because them guys from that beach over there. I can't. So I couldn't go nowhere, dude. I lived in the next square about that big.
Yeah.
That was it. That was my life. I will never live in a square. I will never rob myself from enjoying this free world, man, that we have.
Yeah, well, maybe now you can take me to one of the restaurants you always like going to eat. You always putting on Facebook, eating all that good food.
Oof,
We can go
telling you.
anywhere.
See, you don't eat pork, bro, so I can't even help you. I love swine. I can't help it, man. I love pork chops.
So, Caesar, real quick before we go on to number 3, getting back to the, I was mentioning about something came to my mind that I'm always telling the men in the groups about knowing your story. I mean, it's already set up for us if you think about it, like uh, uh, the past, the present, and the future, who I was, who I am, who I intend to be, insight, responsibility, and remorse. Like, man, when you look at it, they all connect. Like, that's what shows up for me when I hear that. Like, man, my story, who I was, that's insight. Who I am, this is the changed person, the changed man that's before you. Who I intend to be, this, living this life of service and giving back. Like, man, it just helps me manage it, be able to know it and be able to share it, because there's a lot in it. It can get overwhelming at times. So I think, like, trying to very good tool to have in that, from that understanding, insight, responsibility, remorse, who I was, who I am, who I intend to be. I think that's a great aid in helping learning the story.
Good stuff. Good stuff. So, since we're running out of time, got a few minutes left here. We got 4 questions left. We're going to try to answer one each, and then we'll finish up this video. But it says, what are some of the obstacles to being found suitable for parole? How many 115s, 128s, 1030s do you have? What are they? How long ago did you get the 115s? What self-help group or correspondence course would you address the 115? Why is that important to do, Jamel? Have it addressed before you go to your hearing.
Um, you have an opportunity so the whichever evaluator, it could be the psych evaluation and or the board, they can see that you've already done the work, that you do have an understanding already, and it could be something that you could just breeze through as you go through your hearing, as opposed to somebody who you're in question, like, we don't know, so let's probe and let's spend a lot of time here and digging in and seeing if you do take full responsibility for these the 115s, the 128s, and then it can become very challenging in a hearing in itself. So
True. So number 4 says, have you written a remorse letter? If yes, Why did you write it? If not, why haven't you written a remorse letter? So for me, when I first started this work, and I wasn't really internalizing this work, it was just external. I wrote one remorse letter to the family. But then when I internalized the work and I felt remorseful for all the pain and suffering that I caused, not just the crime that I was in prison for, but the whole thing, that everything since day one, every single crime that I committed since day one, man, I wanted to write letters to everyone. But I knew that it was take me to today still, if I still had to write remorse letters, you know. But I was able to cover the most important ones that I believe, which was my family, the community, the places that I've vandalized, the police department, and I wrote them because I was really, really remorseful of the type of monster that I was when I was out here in the street. You know, um, again, this is one of the components that you need to cover to have a strong suit in, which is insight, responsibility, and remorse. That's a strong. So the more remorse that you can show, the better it will look for you. So number 5, it says, do you know what critical questions will be asked in a psychological evaluation? So you present your verification of parole plan, support letters, positive chronos to the psychologist. Jamel.
Yes. So Caesar, from what I know and what I've experienced in this, the psych evaluation is actually the beginning of your board. So when you go into the psych eval, like you kind of want to present yourself the best you, and have all that there. You want to have your support letters. You want to have your positive chronos. You want to know your life story, your crime. You want to have all those things, and be able to present them in the psych eval. And just like I said, very technical there in the psych evaluation about causative factors and contributing factors. Because here at the end of the day is like, how can you assure us, like, if we let you go, you won't never do this again. You won't never commit a heinous type of crime. In my case, like, how do we know that? And like, man, you want to be prepared for that question. That question is going to be asked. Another question that's going to be asked, like, how did you become that person? How have you changed?
Mm.
Like, you gotta get some well-rounded answers with those type of questions. So that's like 3 questions that I know that's going to be asked in a psych evaluation, which is the beginning of my board. And because I'm aware of that, like, I want to hit a home run. Like you said, there's guys that are going to the board getting found suitable the first time. You best believe those individuals that are going in there getting found suitable the first time, they're meeting every standard. They're meeting the standard. They're hitting it out of the park. So in order to be one of those gentlemen that are going home the first time, like, I'm already put in the work. But here again, Caesar, and I want to say, like, when getting back to the original question, what's your motivation for change? Like, if you're only trying to impress the board, then you're probably going to drop the ball. You're going to get struck out. Like, it has to be more than that. Like, just trying to, like, I'm only doing this for the board. And I'll go as far as to say, because I was one of them, it did start off that way. Like, for some of us, it did start off, well, I'm doing this because it's a requirement. But at some point in our journeys, I'm doing this because, like you said earlier, I want to be a better person. I want to be a productive member of society, a contributing member of society in my home and in my community. So I think, like, we need to really buckle down and understand the psych evaluation is the beginning of our board.
Hold on. So that was great. That was a great interpretation of answering the question 5, Jamel. You know, one thing, and I always use it because this is where I see a lot of guys that it's sort of like I call it the little Soledad, which is Ironwood. These guys are always walking around with their portfolios, right? They're always ready, no
Man,
matter what. Because if you're ready, what is it saying, Jamel?
if you
If you
stay
stay ready,
ready, you gotta get ready.
you ain't got to get ready. There you go. You know, so man, these guys are always ready, bro. They have their portfolios, and these are the guys that are home now
Hmm.
because they have all their stuff. They're ready. They're ready for whatever. You know, I remember one of the guys telling me, "Oh, they never even told me I was going to the psych. I wasn't even prepared." And I was like, "See, what does that sound to you?
Hmm.
It sounds like you're minimizing. It sounds like you're making excuses on why your psych eval went sideways."
Hmm.
Instead of taking responsibility, says, you know what? I should have been on my game. It is what it is. So the last question is, what is the purpose of a closing statement? It should be written out. So the purpose is this is for you, an opportunity for you to say, this is why I deserve a second chance at life, right? This is who I was, this is who I am today, and given an opportunity to go home, this is what I'll be doing.
There you go.
Right? So this is why it's important for you. And then this is where it sometimes sort of becomes about you. You know, they always says, "Oh, well, this is about you," because now you're trying to convince, or not convince, but you're trying to get your point across to these commissioners, where you're saying you don't deserve to go home, but because you're no longer who you used to be, right? Maybe you do deserve a second chance, right? Not because of the crime, but because of the man who you are, a man or woman that you are today, because you've done the work. And that's why I believe these closing statements should they be written out. I would shoot from the hip. I would sit there and say, you know what? I would write it out myself and then shoot it from the heart. It might not be completely the way you've written it, but showing emotions and saying, man, I was a horrible person. I'm not this person anymore. This is who I am today, and this is how I got here, and given the opportunity because I've marketable skills, PIA, vocational training, education. This is what I'll be doing if I get another chance at going home. Do I deserve it? No, but at least I'm not the dude that I used to be anymore, and this is who I am today.
Good stuff, Caesar. Only thing that I would say, man, you said it twice, like shooting from the hip. Man, we ain't doing no more shooting now. Now that we done did 25 and 22 years, like we ain't doing no more shooting.
No more shooting. No more shooting.
No more shooting,
No
man.
more shooting.
Yeah.
You know, but other than that, those are the 6 questions for lesson 1. The next time you see Jamel and I again, we'll be doing lesson 2. We'll be going over some of these questions, and basically a lot of the stuff that we went over today is what we're going to be covering in these lessons, right? Like when we talked about the 115s and how many have you addressed them, that's part of the assignment. The psychological evaluation questions, that's part of the assignment. So this is just, these questions right now, just a warm up, right? This is the warm up phase. And then we start getting to lesson 2, lesson 3, all the way to lesson 10. And then we'll be here for all those lessons. So thank you guys for joining us out there. We hope to see you in the second video. I hope that was beneficial for you. Jamel, any shout outs before we leave?
Nah, man, this has been great. Again, I'm being able to fulfill my purpose, which is to be of service and to give back. And much like many men did in my life, and help me and connect the dots. So I'm just very grateful and thankful again that ARC is able to provide this service during this COVID-19. It's not stopping nothing. We can continue on and doing the work, bro. So I'm just very thankful and grateful. And thank you, gentlemen and ladies, for allowing me and Caesar to have just a small part and role in helping you figure things out.
Cool. Peace, fellas.